Okay friends, so we've completed our topic about what is offer, what is acceptance. We have understood what is consideration, and we have also understood what is the different types of consideration, past, present and future. Let's just give a quick recap to section number 10. Section number 10 has said that there must be an agreement. Every agreement, okay, must be done by must be entered into by parties who are capable of contracting, and they must give free consent. So this agreement only we saw was promises, a set of promises that form the consideration for each other becomes an agreement. And we saw that a promise equals to an offer plus acceptance. So we have covered the rules regarding offer, we have covered the rules regarding acceptance. In addition to that, they said that there must be a lawful consideration and there must be a lawful object. Okay, and it also went on to say that the agreement must not specifically be void. They use the word void. So right now we've seen the provisions regarding offer, we have seen acceptance, we've even seen what is a consideration. Now we are left with understanding what is this concept of void and certain other terms such as voidable, illegal, etc. We have to understand which parties are capable of contracting and which parties are not capable of contracting, and then we need to understand what is the concept of a free consent. So for that purpose, let's try to understand what is a void agreement. A void agreement is that agreement which is devoid of all legal effect. That means it is to be treated as if it never existed, or it is not a contract really, it's non-existence. So if a contract was never in existence, in the sense that if a contract is void and it is to be treated as if it was not existent, then such a contract cannot be enforced in a court of law, and there are no rights and liabilities arising on each party. So void contract is a contradictory term by itself. There is a contract in front of you, you have it signed between both the parties, but for some reason or by reason of law, that contract becomes void. We are pretending like it doesn't exist. So if it doesn't exist, we can't do anything with it. So that is only a void contract. But then we also have the concept of a voidable contract. A voidable contract is an option. It is an option for either one of the parties to put an end to the contract. Now it's not a choice. Giving this option to one person because they have suffered some disadvantage at the hands of the other party. Please remember, a contract is always an agreement between parties. There must be meeting of minds. Both the parties must agree on the same thing. But if it so happens that one party has taken some kind of advantage over the other party, or had fraudulently gotten some kind of benefit from the other party, then the other disadvantaged party has the option to void the contract. So when I say that he has the option to do so, there are two activities which can happen. In a voidable contract, the disadvantaged party can either make it void, if he so wishes. He can say that I do not want anything to do with this contract, I want to make it void, or he can enforce the contract. If he makes the contract as void, it becomes non-enforceable or unenforceable. But then if he decides to ignore the small breach that has happened, or the problem that has arisen from the contract, then he can go and enforce it, and it will be treated as a valid contract. So this is an option known as voidable contracts. The next one is an illegal contract. An illegal contract is an unlawful contract, simple as that. Where the consideration is illegal or where the object is illegal, then we can say that the contract itself has become illegal. What is the example of an unlawful object? Let's say the contract was for the sale of human beings. The sale of human beings is known as slavery, and slavery is abolished. So such a contract itself will become illegal. What is an invalid consideration? The consideration can be such that where a contract has where a contract is for the purpose of killing someone, and the payment will be made out in the transaction of drugs which are banned by every country. So this becomes an illegal consideration as well as an illegal object. So void contracts are those which is to be treated as non-existent. Almost all illegal contracts are void. Voidable contracts is an option to the disadvantaged party, where he can make the contract as void or he can choose to enforce the contract and make it valid. Now, apart from understanding what is void, voidable and illegal, we will now come on to the topic where we spoke about capacity and the free consent concept. We have seen what illegality of a contract is. We will be seeing what is incapacity right now. All these factors relate to situations where there is no free consent. So like I said, let's look at the first concept, that is incapacity or capacity of parties to contract. If you look at section number 11, section number 11 is saying that every person is competent to contract who is of the age of majority, who is of sound mind, and who is not disqualified by contracting under any law to which he is subjected. So section 11 is a positive section. It's saying that these are the people who are allowed to contract. So then automatically, who cannot contract? Who is the person who is not of age of minority? Minors. Sorry, of majority? Minors. Who is not of unsound mind? Lunatics. Or who is a person of unsound mind? Lunatics. Who is a person who is disqualified under law? We will be seeing some examples of them. So generally section 11 allows every person to enter into a contract, but minors, lunatics and persons disqualified by law are considered exceptions to the contract. A person who is not capable of contracting, if they entered into a contract, then it is to be treated as a void contract. So let's look at the first one, minor's contract. What happens if a minor enters into a contract with another person? Now, this is to be considered from the point of view of who is a minor and who is a major. If you look at most of the laws, age of majority is the age of 18. But if you look at a person who has been appointed as a guardian for the minor, then until that minor becomes 21 years of age, he is not to be considered as a major. So that is why they are saying that any person who is under the age of majority, subject to the law that he is that is applicable to him, that is according to the law to which he is subject. So in a minor's contract, we have to look at the case law of Moheri Bibi versus Damodar Ghosh. Here, a minor had borrowed 20,000 rupees from a moneylender, and in turn he had pledged his property to the moneylender. When the minor did not pay up the mortgage amount, the moneylender sued him in the court of law. But the court said that the borrower, being a minor, actually does not have the capability of entering into a contract, and hence the contract by X was void. And as a result, the the minor cannot be forced to repay any amount that was given to him. Now, this case law opened up various possibilities and various interpretations because the court has now treated a void contract as non-existent and nothing can be recovered from a minor's contract. So, where situations like this have arisen, over a period of time, the court has arrived at the following principles regarding minor's contract. So, this is what we need to keep in mind. While a minor's contract is void in law, a minor cannot bind himself by a contract. If he has obtained any benefit, he cannot be asked to repay any amount and be asked to pay. So, the general rule is that a minor cannot be required to pay any money that was given to him. However, over time, the court has said that where a minor has received some kind of a benefit, he may be required to give it back to the person, but he can never be sued for specific performance or even breach of damages. Please remember, students, that if you're being asked this question, you still have to write this point in accordance with the Mohiri Bibi versus Damodar Ghosh case, wherein the court specifically said that the rule is he cannot be asked to repay any kind of mortgage property or mortgage amount as a result of the mortgage property. Every minor's contract is void ab initio. From the very beginning, it is void. There will be many people who will try to say that if a minor becomes a major, then the contract can now be enforced in a court of law. The answer is no, because the word void ab initio means void from the very beginning. Generally, under law, we have a principle known as estoppel. We just read it from the above consideration principle, where one person says something, he cannot later on change that principle especially if someone else has believed him in good faith. The exception to this rule is with regards to a minor. So, if a minor lies about his age on a contract and he receives some kind of a mortgage money, then tomorrow he can, as per the principle of estoppel, he is not allowed to come out and say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not a minor, I'm not a major, I'm actually a minor. Ideally, as per principle of estoppel, he is not allowed to state that. But being a minor, he becomes an exception even to the rule of estoppel. So, in reality, if he was actually a minor but showed himself to be a major, even then the court will not enforce such a contract. Okay. However, if there was fraudulent misrepresentation in the following, the court may direct the minor to restore the property to the other person. So, the court will never enforce a minor's contract, but where there has been a fraudulent misrepresentation, where another party has been cheated, in that case, property may be required to be given back to the person. No other punishment will be given to the minor. So, when we are looking at section 33 of the Specific Relief Act, as we have already studied in the previous chapter, if a minor has received any benefit under an agreement from the other party, it may require him to restore any benefit that he has received from the person thereby, or his estate will be asked to repay it back. So, friends, please be very careful when understanding if a question is being asked to this effect. Can a court enforce a contract against a minor? The answer is no. But if there is a fraudulent misrepresentation, or in the case of estoppel, the court may ask the minor to return any benefit granted to him, especially under the Specific Relief Act. Then the next one is that a minor's estate is liable to pay for necessaries supplied to him. Now, a minor is still required to eat food, maybe attend school, marriage expenses, etc. And if the minor is buying food from someone or is buying necessaries for his daily requirements, essentially that is also a contract. But where a contract is for his necessaries, then the minor's estate has a duty to pay the price for it. Just because you are a minor, you are not entitled to free necessaries. An agreement made by a minor is void, and the court will never direct specific performance of contract. Under section 33 of Specific Relief Act, please understand that only the benefit received is returned back to him. The court will never direct specific performance, neither will the court grant damages. A minor can be an agent, but he cannot be a principal or a partner. He can, however, get benefits of a partnership. Minor is never personally liable, so he can never be adjudicated as an insolvent, and an agreement by a guardian or a parent entered into on behalf of the minor is binding on him, provided that it is for the benefit of that minor. So only if it is for the benefit of that minor and for his necessity, then it is binding on that minor. Otherwise, no contract is binding on the minor. A lunatic's agreement is one where a person is of unsound mind. So generally, a person of unsound mind is considered to be a lunatic. The thing about being unsound is a mental condition, and it is not that just because a person is unsound that he is always of unsound mind. There are situations where he may be of unsound mind, and there may be situations where he can be of clear mind. The purpose of determining who is of unsound mind is because a person who is not clear in the head may not be capable of understanding contracts, and he may not be capable of understanding what he is putting his signature to. He may not be able to form rational judgment to determine whether the contract is in his favor or against him. So if a person is an idiot, a person of low IQ, then it is possible that this is a lifetime condition. A person with a serious mental condition, or many people as they grow older in age, sometimes they develop forgetfulness, Alzheimer's, or even situations where they forget what they're doing. These are situations where it is of a temporary nature. Sometimes even a person can be drunk and may not understand what he is doing. So a drunk person is also to be treated like an unsound person. If a person is of unsound mind, then all the rules relating to a minor will also apply in the case of a lunatic, because necessaries are also required to be supplied to a lunatic or even his family members. There is no personal liability of a lunatic, hence he can never be declared as insolvent. However, if the contract was entered into for the benefit of a lunatic person, it can be enforced, just like that of a minor. So therefore, the concepts relating to minor's contract will also apply to lunatic's agreement, but please understand that lunatic's agreement is not a perpetual period. There may be, the purpose is trying to understand, is he capable of understanding it and forming a rational judgment. Now, who are the other persons who are disqualified or qualified from contracting? Generally, law itself might say you are disqualified from entering into a contract. The example is the Audh Land Revenue Act. If a person is declared to be a disqualified proprietor under the law, then he is not allowed to alienate his property. That means he is not allowed to sell his property. So the action of selling is still a contract, and if he is not allowed to sell his property, then he is not allowed to enter into a contract to sell that property. He is not disqualified from entering into any other contracts. He is just not allowed to alienate his property. The second person is alien enemies. Who is an alien? An alien is a foreigner. So a person who is not of Indian origin or not from India is considered to be, not an Indian citizen, is considered to be an alien. But then there are two types of aliens. There are friends, or who we just simply call as aliens, or there are alien enemies. Any kind of a foreigner is considered as an alien. But if that foreigner belongs to a country that India is at war with, we have officially declared war against the other country, then that any citizen of that country is to be treated as an alien enemy, because an enemy is a person who is at war with you. And if our country is at war with their country, then it does not make any sense to continue contracting for trade or any such thing. So automatically, any contracts with alien enemies will become void, or it will get cut. Foreign sovereigns and ambassadors. Now, foreign sovereigns are persons who are the heads of state of foreign states. Whether they're the president or the prime ministers or persons of high position or ambassadors, high commissioners, etc., they enjoy a special privilege in our country. They cannot be sued in Indian courts, but they are allowed to enter into a contract in India. So what happens is that they are allowed to enter into contracts in India through an agent. And the agent will end up becoming personally responsible for the performance of the contracts. Then we have professional persons. In England, advocates, that is barristers at law, or even physicians and surgeons, were not allowed to sue for their fee. If someone did not pay them their fees, then they cannot sue for the fee. However, they can sue or be sued for all claims other than professional fees. However, in India, there is no such concept. If any advocate with the right to plead or the right to contract can also sue for his fees. Corporations. Corporations are fictitious legal entities. However, our our Companies Act says that once a company is properly incorporated, it has the right to enter into a contract. It can sue, it can be sued, it can buy property, it can hold property, but obviously a company cannot enter into marriage, it cannot enter into certain social agreements, etc. So therefore, any kind of contract beyond its capacity is actually outside the scope of contract law. Next one is married women. Now, in today's world, there is no difference between married women, unmarried women, or men. However, earlier it was said that a woman was considered to be the responsibility of a man, and therefore a woman cannot contract, but the man will contract on behalf of her. But today that is a very different situation. A woman can contract just like a man. As long as she is a major, she is of sound mind, then she is completely capable of contracting. So friends, this is what it means to have a void agreement, voidable agreement, illegal contracts, or even capacity to contract. Minors and lunatics agreements have to be seen from their individual provisions. While they are not enforceable under court of law, you have to look at certain specific situations. There are persons who are disqualified from contracting under specific laws or by being in a specific situation, such as barristers or married women or even foreign ambassadors, etc. However, please keep in mind that married women and even barristers at law or attorneys can sue for their fees today. Married women can contract just like men in today's world.